Hello, everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. How is everyone doing this evening? Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to episode 424 of the Welcome to Asgard podcast, where tonight we are going to talk about John Wick Chapter 4 and how it has been quite the run at the box office in its opening weekend, continuing to do well into its first Monday. And we'll do some comparisons to some of the other films in the franchise. The movie actually has already made more than the entire gross of the first John Wick film, though we do, of course, also know that this film's budget is much higher, significantly higher than all of the other films up to this point, and so it does need to make quite a bit more than the other films have previously to hit its break-even point, but I think that it will probably be able to do that pretty easily, even though it will have competition over the next couple of weeks from films like Dungeons & Dragons, which I personally don't have that much interest in going to see, but it's going to bring in at least some money. And then, of course, next week we finally have the release of the Super Mario Brothers movie, and the game will be on. The game will be afoot for whether or not I or Jeremy of Geeks and Gamers will have to eat pineapple on pizza, dependent upon whether that film is able to actually hit $1 billion. I'll be able to probably have a pretty decent idea after the first week or two at the very least. So tonight, though, focusing mostly on John Wick and talking about the incredibly poor performance from Shazam 2, which, as of today, has had its first sub-$1 million day. So it hasn't even been out for 2 weeks. It hasn't even had a full second week of the weekday release, and it is already below $1 million in its dailies, and that is completely abysmal. This film is barely over $100 million, probably won't even get to $200 million, and even though I don't think the film is as bad as the box office is indicating it, it's definitely not a good film by any means, and it's far from what the first film was able to do. So we'll talk about that. And it is Passiontide. Last past Sunday was Passion Sunday. It's a reminder to us that next week is Holy Week, and so it's a week for us to prepare for the holiest week of the entire season. So we'll go ahead and get started. Before going further, though, make sure you smash the like button, light the fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and smash the rumble button as we are multi-streaming on all of the platforms this evening. Let us say hello to some people. We got Master of Gaming, who was here early on. How's it going? I see, for some reason, the times I click on the boxes, it continues to give me crazy options for some reason. I don't know why that is the case, but it is starting to get very, very old. Anyway, Tina B, what is going on? Hail to you. Yeah, I heard about that. Rings of Power kills a horse. Film at 11. Just stopping in to say hello. I'm working on dinner and then going to eat. Long day, did taxes today with a friend. Glad it's over. Ah, yes. I still need to get the taxes done myself. And I do need to start to get my list of items ready. Itemization is quite annoying. Brian Barth, what is going on? Welcome back. Snortapupus Cuber says, hello, human than other quitters. What's going on, Snortapupus? Great Wuda in the chat. Hail to you. Great Wuda also says, I just watched John Wick Chapter 4 and enjoyed it a lot. You are right. A lot of the action scenes really did feel like a video game. Best film in 2023 so far. Definitely would agree with you there. It is by far the best film to come out so far this year. It is up there with me, also with the film Operation Fortune, Ruse de Guerre, which was a film that came out a few weeks ago, which unfortunately didn't really make anything at the box office, is going to ultimately end up being a box office failure. However, still a good film nonetheless. And then we have John Wick Chapter 4, which is doing very well at the box office. Still needs to go a little bit longer, needs to go a little bit further for it to hit its own break-even point, but I suspect that will either happen by this weekend or at least by next weekend. I give it at least 2 weeks before it hits the $300 million mark, which is right now roughly the break-even point. The break-even point is about $250 million, and I think it's going to be able to hit that pretty easily, if I had to guess. Alice McCarthy, what is going on, good sir? Says, howdy, old, and how's it going? How's the war? Brain MRI early tomorrow morning. Hopefully they'll find out what's causing these headaches so I can go watch terrible movies again. Hope that you are doing okay, man. Kimberly G saw John Wick today. Awesome, great cinematography. Seemed like each palace had a color theme. Oh yeah, absolutely. The cinematography on the film is absolutely phenomenal. It's gorgeous. And I mean, that ultimately not only goes into the actual cinematography, but also the production design, right? All of the people who are, framing all of those shots, getting all of the things and items, and obviously all of the different colors and all the backdrops are just, again, it's just beautiful. You're absolutely right. My favorite sequence by far, cinematography wise, is there's this great overhead shot. I forget exactly the location. It might be in France, but it is shot from the perspective of being overhead almost the entire time, and it's phenomenal. And so that one's really good. And my favorite location, I think, might actually end up being the Osaka Continental, though. And obviously, as you all know, if you've been watching the channel for any length of time, you know that I very much enjoy old school Japanese films. Big Kurosawa fan. Had a huge kick a couple years back, especially of a lot of older samurai films. I got the Zatoichi franchise, and I still need to finish all of the films, but I've watched a lot of them and they're great. So I loved all of the decisions they made in the Osaka Continental, especially because of the use of weaponry. And of course, with that ultimately comes some really awesome fight sequences to boot. In fact, I've actually, over the last week, been watching all of the John Wick films all over again because of how much I enjoyed this one. I mean, that's what the film does. Like, I know some people probably watched all 3 before watching 4 in way of anticipation, and that makes complete sense. And had I had the time, I probably would have done the same. But luckily, I was able to have a little bit of extra time to be able to start watching them, on and off. And so I'm literally about to finish John Wick Chapter 3. And as I was watching them, I always have given the description of the 3 that have, come out, and now the 4th that has just come out. I've always described the first 3, though, as I think the first is the best movie. I think the second one has the best story. And I think the third one has the best action. And as I was watching them, I realized that, you know what? All 3 are just great films. I mean, I can absolutely still put them into different criteria and say which one has, is stronger here versus being stronger there. But I love all, now all 4 of the films because I think they all have great stories. I think they all have great action sequences. And, you forget the things that happened in John Wick 2 and John Wick 3. And it's just phenomenal. Again, the defense of the New York Continental that I just finished watching is great. There's some great fight sequences in that. Him versus, I call them just like the fighting brothers. I'm pretty sure they're part of like a Japanese gang, and the fight that he has with them at the very end is awesome. And I think that there's so many great things in all of the movies. And it's great for John Wick 4 to basically just be a complete encapsulation of the entirety of the franchise, right? To be able to offer you not only the amazing fight sequences that we've expected and have gotten in every single film, but then also to be able to take the story and really also run with it to such a degree that it is also left just, and again, what they're able to do is so impressive. JS Pena, what is going on? Welcome. Kincaid Rumsky hanging out over on Rumble. What's going on, good sir? Thank you very much for hanging out over there. I don't know why the YouTube thing is doing that. It's so annoying. Orange Eye Reviews, what is going on? Welcome back, good sir. He says, welcome to Asgard. Get Odin's attention by typing at Odin. Yes, indeed, he is one of my mods, and he will indeed drop the hammer if you break any of the rules. Don't spam. Be polite and courteous to others. We are a fun and loving community here in Asgard. And at Odin at the very beginning of your comment, at Odin lets me know you're trying to get my attention. And it's kind of like a code word in a lot of ways. I will say hello to you if you have just a random comment with my name in it, but at Odin lets me read the entirety of the comment. Your Barmy, what is going on? Hail to you. We got Scott McKenzie, who is a member on the channel. Memberships mean you don't have to worry about tagging. Greetings, y'all, he says. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. You can indeed check your cookie count. If you watch the streams, you get free digital cookies by watching. That's kept track of by my bot, and we use those for giveaways and such. All right, Jilo, what's going on? Welcome back. We got Brightburn1985 in the chat. What's going on? Saying Shazam 2 is no Sony Spider-Man 2 in terms of being a box office juggernaut. Oh, no. Not even close. Not even close. Though, again, I will also argue that it's also not the worst of the DCEU films either. I honestly firmly believe that there are worse films than Shazam 2. Now, do I think that Shazam 2 deserves to lose money? Yeah, it's not a good movie. as all the other films that ended up making money somehow that were also bad deserve to lose money. I'm always happy when a movie that is just not good and is just not well put together, ultimately loses money. But I also, obviously am still, thinking that other films that are not good should also fit into the same boat. Hopefully more and more people are starting to wake up to all of these different things that we've been talking about in films for a long time. And really, beyond even just like wokeness or politics, the biggest thing of all is just not good stories, And it's basically come to the point where these studios have just been punting when it comes to the storytelling, right? They've said, storytelling is going to come last for us. We want to get the film out. We want to get it done. We're going to spend a lot of money on the effects to make it flashy, to make people want to come see the movie, but we don't care really about the story. We don't really care about the continuity. We don't really care whether we're actually going to be able to engage with our audience. And so that's why so many of the MCU and DCU films have just been complete and utter garbage. And that's why films like John Wick, it's a part of a franchise, right? It's the fourth film in a franchise. They've got Ballerina set to come out within the next year or so, I believe. I know that they're actually in post-production on the film. But I know that film is upcoming. Yeah, it says it's going to be released in 2024 at some point. So that film coming out next year. Hold on one second. Let me see. There might be a... Let's see. Following John Wick Chapter 4's successful opening weekend in the United States, Lionsgate's motion picture group chair, Joe Drake, told Deadline the film is planned for a 2024 release in either the spring or summer of 2024. So that film's already in post-production. Crazy that's going to be in post-production for almost the better part of a year. But I guess maybe they're going to start to think, hey, we want to make sure that movie is not just a random spin-off and it can actually, hold its own. But hey, having someone like Ana de Armas in the film itself, also having, of course, John Wick himself in the movie, because that film takes place between 3 and 4, I believe. So going to be able to be interesting to see the different context of that. But having all of those people in the film, I think is just going to just raise it to another level. So I'm very, very excited for that. So good. Scott McKenzie, absolutely prayers to the Nashville families affected by the shooting, especially those who lost their lives, and for the pastor and his family. Yeah, absolutely. For anyone, right, who lost their lives, we pray for them and for all those impacted by it. It's a terrible circumstance, and it always sickens me whenever media decide to try to run with politics, right? And the fact that we have, in our own country, an administration that from the word go immediately starts blaming political factions and starts blaming weapons, it just disgusts me. And it ultimately is ignoring the real problem in all of these cases, and that is the issue of mental health. No one wants to actually sit down and have a good conversation about how we can better address the mental health crisis that we've had in this country for such a long time. Because guess what? That means we have to bring up uncomfortable subjects like the role of the pharmaceutical industry in said crisis, the role of governmental politics in that crisis. And that's just not something that a lot of these politicians want to talk about. They'd rather say it's all about guns, or it's all about this, or it's all about that. And it's just such a multifaceted issue. And it just honestly also exposes to you who are the people that are just there to play politics and who are there to actually get something done and actually try to make change for the better. Because anyone talking politics right now about this specific event, if they're in Congress, they should be voted out. Simple as that. I don't care what letter's next to their name. If they're bringing and talking about politics with this, they're ignoring a much bigger issue. Hannibal Grimm, what is going on? Saying, Fossey, Fossey, Fossey. Alexander L. the Russian, hail to you. Says, hi there. I thought you ate my time. I really never intended to annoy you. I just had bad social skills. Remember years ago, whatever. Well, Alexander, I mean, if it's been years ago, then if you are the Alexander L. of old, welcome back. Been a long time. Glad to have you here. But my time has always been the same. Never changed. Alex Grimes says, speaking of pizza, apparently Ryan is sick and missed the Geeks and Gamers morning stream because of bad pizza. Can't say I'm that surprised. That one, he can't hold his pizza, and two, that he would have bad pizza. I imagine that it probably was a pizza he had left on the floor somewhere, building up mold or something. If I had to take a guess. King Kane Rumsky over on Rumble says, does Spider-Man stand alone as the only watchable superhero franchise today? No, because Spider-Man 3 sucks. I don't know if that's going to trigger people, but most people can at the very least admit Spider-Man 1 is great with Tobey, of course. Spider-Man 1's great. Spider-Man 2 is good. I think the ending's a little cringe personally. The way that MJ running in the wedding dress is just very too cheesy for my taste. I just, at that moment, I'm like, oh, everything else was great about this movie. Why'd you have to have that? And then Spider-Man 3 comes out and it's just not good. It's just not a good film. So no, I would not say it's a standalone, the best standalone franchise, because then you follow that up with the Amazing Spider-Man films. And I do really like Andrew Garfield. You know, that was not one of the issues I had. Some people did have issues with him. And maybe their minds were changed when No Way Home came out. But I liked him from the kind of the get-go. And No Way Home just made that even more cathartic. And it made you miss even the subpar movies that he was in, because the movies themselves he was in, the Amazing Spider-Man films, were not that great, especially their villains and CG. Again, I could go on. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely not the only perfect standalone franchise. Or, I mean, there's other, watchable franchises, I guess, that one could potentially look to. I guess the one that I could possibly think of off the top of my head would be, if we're going just superhero movies, I think that the Captain America franchise is pretty strong, because even though Civil War is definitely the weakest by far, I mean, you look at the Captain America, all the other Captain America films, and I think that they are pretty good. I think Winter Soldier is one of the best MCU films that they've ever made. So, Cthulhu, what's going on? Bruce in the chat. Hail to y'all both being here. Forever Sci-Fi, who is a member on the channel. Hail to you. Thank you very much for being here. Great Wuda says, Operation Fortune is my second best film of 2023 so far as well. We're on the same page. Absolutely. And I'm very excited because that film, I believe, should be getting released on physical media in just a matter of days. I think next Tuesday. Tuesdays are when films tend to be released on physical media. So I believe next Tuesday is when Operation Fortune comes out on physical media. At least that was the date that I saw when I pre-ordered them. So very excited to get those in. And I have some copies that I'll be able to give away as well. Probably will be in the giveaways channel on the Discord for those who are keeping the Bifrost level and above on Patreon, Subscribe Star, and Locals. Check out the link in the description if you want to have access to the giveaways. Just gave out a bunch of 4Ks. I'm going to ship those out over the next couple of days for those that were a part of that giveaway. But I was very excited because I was able to pick up films like 2001: Space Odyssey on 4K, Kubo and the Two Strings on 4K Steelbook, which is just beautiful. By the way, beautiful film. If you've never seen Kubo, it's great. Leica, I thought, had so much potential because they had a great film in Coraline. Kubo was fantastic. Box Trolls was Paranormal was okay. But Kubo, to me, I think actually is probably my favorite of theirs. And then I was also able to get some 4Ks for Love and Monsters in addition to the other 4Ks that I have. And so very excited to be able to get those taken care of. Ben Dowdy, I just saw that in the live chat. Bruh, thank you so very much for becoming a member at the Citizen of Asgardian level and then gifting 5 memberships. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're awesome. Very much appreciate that. All right. Chat has jumped on me like it always does. But yeah, shout out to you, Ben Dowdy, for becoming a member and then gifting the 5 memberships. Very much appreciate that. Congratulations to Laura, the Modern Major General in the chat, who got a membership. Cthulhu, Keely Chow, Bruce, and Mike Jackson for becoming the newest members, thanks to the generosity of one Ben Dowdy. You're awesome. Let's see. We got the Morak in the chat. Hail to you. Thank you for being here. Brian Barth says, what do you think of Nicolas Cage? Do you think he is a great actor? Again, it depends on what we mean by actor here. If we mean acting capacity and ability in a dramatic or competent sense, I would say no. I don't think so. Some people might. I'm not one of them. Do I think that he's a talented actor in the way in which he's able to entertain in various degrees? Yes. I like him a lot. Scott McKenzie, I watched the 3 recently. Yeah, I mean, they all still hold up very, very well. And the only film that is difficult for me to watch is still the first one. And the reason why is because even though it's been, 2014, it's almost been 10 years since the first film came out, the entire sequence with the dog gets me every time. As a dog owner, as a lover of animals, and of course of my 2 poops who are both passed out right now. As you all know, the Hounds of Asgard are awesome, but yeah, that always gets to me, and it's like I almost feel like skipping it but then it's like, I don't want to skip part of a movie, especially one that's so relevant and so important. I don't know. Brightburn85, John Wick chapters 1 through 4, the cinematic Mount Rushmore of action movie. Oh, absolutely. I will also, of course, say there's many other action films that are definitely also up there. I would put there's 2 films in the franchise, but The Raid 1 and 2, I think are also definitely films to put up there in action sequences. A lot of Tony Jaa films, The Protector, great action sequence. If you like stunt work, Protector is great. Ong Bak as well. I've only seen the first one. I know there's others, but those are 2 that I can think of other than John Wick that are also great action. But yeah, absolutely. Your average Patriot nerd, what's going on? Saying hail, jumping in from Park Hoppin' Stream. Yeah, hail to the Park Hoppin' Stream. Hail to Jay, who I know was who had gone live earlier. Shout out to him. As of right now, I will be in Orlando this weekend. I'm still trying to figure out where I'm going to sleep on Friday because I have work on Friday and therefore cannot leave until after work. And that means I won't be getting into Orlando probably until maybe 1 or 2 in the morning. So Airbnb is a possibility, but I also, I'm still trying to figure that part out. But I should be in on Saturday and be walking around MegaCon, I'm sure. And hopefully we get, we should be getting more details on what our plans are other than the panel at MegaCon in Orlando. I believe also my friend John Flickinger is going to be at this one too. I know he's been to one in Ohio, and I think he's got a couple others on his plate that he's going to be going to. Last time I talked to him, he said he was actually going to be in he's going to be on a panel in the MegaCon in Orlando. So I might be able to see him there and hang out with him. That'd be fun. Let's see. Alexander says, I remember in Zatoichi I had a fight scene, which is the only scene I saw. Weird CGI, was a little weird. Look, what do you mean? Zatoichi, I don't know which... Again, I haven't seen all the Zatoichi films, but I don't know how you could say CGI. Zatoichi most of those films were made at a time when CGI wasn't a thing. Anyway, Gary Banjo Sandwich. Wick is an action ballet. Great viewing. Oh, yeah. That's a great way of describing it, is an action ballet for sure. Keely Chow, what's going on? Baby Thor's doing fine. The Lady Freya also doing fine. Thank you very much for checking in. Orange Hat Reviews, who is a member, says, just got back from the doc yesterday. Surgery set for next month. 3 kidney stones, not just 1. So this will be a novel experience. Ah, yes. Well, I'm happy that the surgery is set. I'm happy they know what it is and that it's not something worse, because obviously there are definitely things that could be much worse. So obviously continue to pray for you, good sir, for a successful surgery, and hopefully for any of the pain you're going to have to experience in the meantime is not too bad. Anyway, remember to put @Odin at the very beginning of your comment, @Odin, if you want to get my attention to have your comment read. So don't tag the channel name, just tag @Odin, please. Helps me out, and I'm trying to be consistent with that. Yarish Patriot Nerd, who is a member, again, one of the exceptions is to be a member, says, the Ambrosia scene was really cringe. I pain laughed. The Ambrosia. Oh, okay, yeah. At first I was like, what are we talking about? Okay, yeah, with Shazam 2. Oh, absolutely. For those that have not seen the film, it's not really much of a spoiler, but it's some of the worst product placement I've ever seen in a movie. So basically, they are trying to be able to convince the unicorns. Yeah, that's where I'm going with this. So monsters exist once the tree of life, or the tree that is grown by the daughters of Atlas. Once the tree grows, there are different monsters that will hatch from them, and it's kind of cool. Like there's different monsters from, of course, different legends. Whether it be the Cyclops or things like that. And one of them is the fact that a unicorn exists in this universe. But it's not the kind of unicorn you're thinking of. It's a unicorn it's a dark creature, and it hates things. And so in order to convince them, you need typically ambrosia. They're a big fan of ambrosia, which is supposed to be like sweet, sugar, I guess, nectar of the gods. But that's kind of like the mindset of what it's supposed to be. So they don't have that. They don't actually have actual ambrosia. And so one of the girls decides, hey, I've got Skittles. That's close enough. And says several times, taste the rainbow. Yes. Not only does she promote Skittles, but she even says the Skittles catchphrase. as a part of the plot for the movie. So why is it losing money? Well, I completely understand why at this point. The Morak says, thoughts on His Only Son from Angel Studios. Never heard of it. Orange Chat says, my thoughts on John Wick 4. The movie works to expand lore more and include the Book of Wick in a way that is appropriate and doesn't needlessly extend the franchise to gratuity. Oh, in fact, I would say it does the opposite. I would say it actually, in a lot of ways, does a good job of pushing the story forward. And we are still, we're still a week out from its initial release, right? We're now past the second weekend. So I'm still going to try to avoid, too many spoilers. But at this point, I cannot protect you in the chat. So I'm not going to put chat protections on at this point. So Orange Chat, if people are going to have conversations with each other, just please have no one tag me in anything that's going to be like blatant spoiler. I do want to give it maybe at least an extra week because there are some pretty big things. There's one major thing especially that I would rather not talk about. Just in case there is anyone who hasn't seen it. But again, for anyone that actually does care, if you haven't seen it yet, I can't protect you at this point. Abomination hanging out over on Odyssey. What is going on, Abomination? Thank you very much for being here. Alexander says, how many Zatoichi films are there? I forgot Zatoichi was a classic franchise. I want to say there's like 20. There's a lot of films. Forever Sci-Fi. It's not as easy to manipulate mentally stable people towards your goals. Yeah. Dr. Van Nostrand, welcome back. Ben Dowdy, again, thank you for being here, for becoming a member. Mike Jackson, Ryan is floor pizza. Absolutely. Eclulu, do you think John Wick 4 ending after Duel was rushed or appropriate? Oh, I thought that it worked very well. No, I thought it was incredibly appropriate for the story that they were telling within the movie itself. And I think that they had definitely set up for it, not only in this film, but in previous films too. So I thought it was very appropriate. It's more of a question of, okay, where do we go from here? And, what do we do with the franchise? Obviously, we have Ballerina coming out next year. And then the Continental, I believe it was initially a show, and I know it's kind of gone through some production issues as far as its release is concerned, but I know that could be a lot of fun. So there's a lot of these side quests and side stories within the John Wick universe that can obviously be given attention, but clearly the people, the thing that people care about most is going to be John Wick, right? It's Keanu Reeves. So it is going to be interesting to see what they do just going forward with all of the things that happen in the movie. Abomination over on Honesty had to say, would be funny if memes took over saying the pride flag is the Skittles flag. Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if those things kind of already exist. Forever Sci-Fi, I would have figured Ryan would be immune to food poisoning from years of floor pizza and trash can Taco Bell. Yeah, you would think so. He doesn't, publicly doesn't seem to eat very well, so you would think he would kind of build up his immune system there. Great Wuda says, yes, Spider-Man 3 is the worst Spider-Man film of all time. I would not say of all time. Again, at least to me, it's comically bad, whereas I think Amazing Spider-Man 2 is pretty garbage. Laura, the Mono Major General, says, worldwide pizza mold zombie horde traced back to Ryan's floor pizza. Exactly. Gulag Inmate 1066, welcome. Thank you for being here. There's Ben Dowdy dropping those memberships. Appreciate that again, good sir. All right. Let's see. Rob D. Time to say, hello, Odin. I'd say Warner Brothers now only has one source of income, tax write-off refunds. They must be oh so proud. That's pretty much all that they can do at this point. Absolutely. Because they're not making really anything at all from what we can tell from their streaming service based off of previous reports. And we know for sure they're not making any money off of their movies. And they don't have one major film in the pipe or one major film in the past that's still giving them some type of residual, So they're in pretty big trouble at this point, and they've been in trouble for a long time. I mean, I remember when I did the box office yearly breakdown and broke down what Warner Brothers did during COVID in the last couple of years, it was really, really bad, for sure. King Rumsky over on Rumble says, which production company handles the John Wick franchise? So I know Lionsgate does the physical release, does the distribution of the film, and it's a few different production companies that actually are part of the production of the film itself. He says, I was asking for today. For example, today, Captain America is a Falcon in a wig. Talking about the earlier comment about watchable standalone franchise today. Oh, okay, gotcha. But that's the thing. That's a hard thing to say because you say Spider-Man, even then. So Kincaid and Rumsky, I actually still stand by the same comments I said, because even by saying today, I don't know if you know the question that you're trying to ask, because everything I said is still relevant to that same question. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the first bit of news, though, with the John Wick franchise, because, yeah, things are pretty good. So as I said, the distribution company for them is Lionsgate, and as you can see, in its first Monday, it dropped 70% from the previous day, which is very typical of a lot of these movies, making $5.6 million. Notice how the second place film on Monday was a sub-$1 million film in Scream 6. $737,000. Creed 3 at $678,000. And then all the way number 4th, after 11 days of release, notice that all these other ones have been out longer, is Shazam 2. $674,000. This becomes really bad, especially when you compare this to the previous movie. So the previous film cost $96 million. And again, this is using the numbers.com's adjusted for inflation numbers, which are not always the most accurate. But it's still a good to get an idea of this nonetheless, right? So for the domestic opening weekend, we already knew that the film came in half of what the first Shazam film did. If you look at the total domestic box office, only a $46.6 million. Oof. The first one made $160. I don't think there's a chance for this film in Shazam to make it to $100 million domestic. So you're looking at a film probably going to end up making 60, maybe. So $100 million less than the previous film domestic. It's at $55 million internationally. So what? You're looking at $200 million, or maybe $150 million more accurately, $150 million less than what we had. I mean, seriously, it's not good. Then you look at the worldwide total right now, Shazam only at $102.4 million, whereas the first Shazam made over $414 million. So not only do they pump more money into the film, they are getting so much less in comparison, where it'll be, again, half opening weekend. You're probably at best half of the entire total of the first Shazam film, and it's probably going to be even worse than that. And if you want to see just how bad things are, just go ahead and compare these opening weekends and these daily numbers. There's not a single day where Shazam 2 beat the original Shazam. In fact, the original Shazam doubles it almost every single one of these days. First Monday, Shazam 2, 1.6 to the 3.4 of that. What's really insane, though, as I said, it has already come in under $1 million in a daily number. The second Monday numbers, $674,000 versus the first Shazam's $2.3 million on its second Monday. So it is completely abysmal. And this film is going to end up losing quite a bit of money, especially if you believe the break-even point is closer to 3 times its budget, whereas I have it at 2.5. If it's 3 times the budget, oh goodness, you're talking about well over $100 million flop. However, we cannot say the same thing, gladfully, for the John Wick 4 film. So this film also saw a huge increase in budget, again, basically doubling the budget, compared to all the other films. So the adjusted numbers for inflation for the first film was $38 million, Chapter 2 was $46, Chapter 3 was $45, and again, these are based off of the numbers metrics on inflation, which tend to fall a little bit further behind where they should. But we still get a good metric nonetheless. The opening weekend was indeed the highest of the franchise. I was able to confirm this by actually running the numbers and putting in the correct adjustment rate for inflation there. And even with that being the case, though, John Wick 3 was the closest, but was not able to get to. I think that altogether, when you do a more accurate adjustment, it's actually $66 million. Either way, though, you're talking about the film easily getting the highest opening weekend. But opening weekends, as Ant-Man 3 has shown us, don't mean a darn thing. What is this film doing in the dailies? It's doing still pretty well. The total domestics at $79 million. The first John Wick film only made it ever to $55 million. And again, the reason why is because it was a brand new franchise. It was an original franchise. No one really knew much about it. And it didn't even break $100 million. And yet, what did it do between the first and second? it got such a huge fan base from people saying, hey, you didn't see this movie? Hey, watch the Blu-ray. Hey, watch this. Hey, watch this. And it was able to double its money. By John Wick Chapter 3, you were able to see it essentially double its money again. And I don't think we're going to see the same here. I've actually seen some people say they think they're going to see similar numbers. I'm looking at the numbers right now, and I'm saying that's not likely going to happen. The film is going to do very well. You're looking at the film easily passing up $200 million this weekend. Wouldn't surprise me to see the film's worldwide box office by the end of this coming weekend be closer to somewhere around 250 to 300 million, which would be right at the break-even point. It wouldn't surprise me to see that. Could come in less, but it wouldn't surprise me to see it that high. So that's why I think ultimately the film has a good chance of being the highest of the franchise. But a lot of that is going to depend on its legs. The fact that this film will have a lot of competition, as there are major films coming out almost every single weekend going forward. And also, it will have to be able to compete with a film that is significantly longer than all of the other films. That extra 45 minutes to an hour over the other films means less show times, and that not only hurts theaters because they can't show the film as often, but it also tends to hurt films. It's not always the case, right? We can clearly think of examples where that's not the case, and a great film like John Wick is definitely not going to lose people to those runtimes, but it does just mean there's going to be a much more limited amount of screenings, and even if the film is very popular because it's really good, as this film is, that is still a limitation nonetheless. It's not going to be able to compete with shorter films to the same degree as far as, keeping space. That all being said, the film is still in a very good position to, at the very least, it's going to absolutely pass up John Wick Chapter 2, which is good. But the big question to me that I still don't know the answer to, and of course, once we have the weekend numbers, I'll be able to do the box office breakdown and do my projections, which are usually pretty spot on. And if, again, the numbers end up being where I think they are, you're looking at this film being able to probably get pretty close to, if not pass, the entire box office total for John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum. One way to kind of see why it looks like this will be the film that it'll be going up against is because if you look at the numbers and compare them, 25 for John Wick 3 versus the 29 for John Wick 4, 25 to 22, 18 to 16. First Monday, John Wick Chapter 3 made more, 6.5 to the 5.6 of John Wick Chapter 4. And so even though, obviously, 4 has an advantage by about 8 million, it's going to be interesting to see where this film ends up landing in comparison. Because as I said, I can see the film being the highest of the franchise, but I can also see the film being successful, meaning making its money back, making a profit, but not being able to pass up or easily pass up that of John Wick Chapter 3. And why do I think that? Ticket sales. Remember, every other John Wick film has doubled their ticket sales opening weekend. Every single one of them. Until now. We saw an increase. We did not see a doubling, though. So we're still going to see the film do well because it's got the good word of mouth. It's got the good start. But because we're not seeing that doubling effect, it's hard for me to justify or somehow be able to say that, with any sense of confidence, that it's going to be able to do something even similar to that of the previous films in the franchise. And so again, John Wick Chapter 4 doing very well. It is definitely the best and hottest ticket right now at the box office, but it's going to get bumped out of IMAX screens this coming weekend. That's going to hurt some of its business. And it's not going to get those back the next week because you have Mario coming out the week after. So you basically are, if you want to see this film in IMAX, which I recommend, if you want to see this film in any premium format screen, which I would recommend, you basically just have a couple more days to do it because it's going to get kicked out of pretty much all of those premium format screens to make way for Dungeons and Dragons. And then the week after that, and by the way, earlier release for the Mario Brothers film. So you'll have even less time for the Dungeons and Dragons film, because then that film is going to take over all of these as well. So anyway, what we have, of course, Shazam showing it to be a complete and utter failure in every single way possible. Never thought that the numbers would be this bad. I mean, when I saw those opening numbers, I said, okay, this is not good. I did not suspect this. Whereas with John Wick Chapter 4, things are looking pretty good, but it still has a little ways to go if it's going to be able to follow the same box office pedigree as the other films in the franchise. It's still going to do well, but as you all know, I am fair, even with films that I like, whether people think so or not. Bruce, who is a member, says, Atomic Blonde. I think that film's overrated. I'm going to be honest. It's fine, but it's overrated. Again, if you have a comment or question, just put @Odin at the very beginning of your comment. @Odin, please. If you've been in the chat for a while, y'all should know better. Anyway, Hardwick, what's going on? His member tagged also to say, I like the first 3, but for some reason, I just haven't been able to get hyped for John Wick 4. I never even bothered watching the trailer. Hardwick, what is wrong with you? Do you have a pulse? You can't have a pulse. You cannot possibly be alive. You cannot possibly be alive, especially if you're asking me about Renfield in the live chat, because I just saw that comment. You can't ask me about any new movie until you've seen John Wick Chapter 4. How about that? I will declare you excommunicado from asking questions about newer films until you've actually seen John Wick Chapter 4. What is wrong with you? How dare you? You've insulted me. In fact, to Hardwick, I have to say this.
You leave me no choice but to declare you excommunicado.
You left me no choice. You left me no choice. Anyway, over on Rumble, KK and Rumsky, okay, it says, other than Spider-Man today, what other superhero franchise do you even enjoy watching as it stands currently as of right now? And again, and he says, today, Tom Holland is Spider-Man. Yes, but the problem with that question is that by today, you have to include every single other franchise that has ever come out. So if what you, I think, are trying to say is, what modern day or what movie coming out the last year do you think is a part of a franchise that is still good? But the way you're asking the question, it's not saying what you think it is saying, KK and Rumsky. And the answer, I can't really give you an answer because I don't think there's really any good superhero films or good superhero franchises anymore based off of things that are coming out recently. So let's just leave it at that. I don't want to answer that question again. Started to trigger me. There it is. Dr. Martin, what's going on? Time to say, I like Equalizer more than all of the Wicks. Denzel is super savior versus the revenge motif of Wick. Also attended the church in Nashville. I absolutely will pray for them. I have not seen The Equalizer, so I can't speak to that film, but I don't like how you seem to be downplaying. I don't like how you seem to be downplaying the Wicks. The Wicks are fantastic. General Wingster says the 3DS eShop died yesterday. Never had a handheld as a kid, and it was my first, the end of an era. RIP Wii U and 3DS. I thought I remember hearing about that. Yeah, because I actually have a 2DS XL. And, I mean, I know that for people that maybe have used it a lot, maybe that's a big deal. For me, it's not as much. I mean, I guess since you can't access digital versions of games, but you know me, I'm more of a physical media person anyway. But I was always sad when things like that happen. So. All right, chat has jumped at me like it always does. All right, I'm going to go ahead and skip that one because it's referencing another comment. Don't self-reference comments like that. Anyway, I'm talking to you, Hardwick. Let's see. Orange Hat Reviews, who's a member, says, spoiler, John Wick is Baba Yaga. There it is. Forever Sci-Fi, I haven't seen it yet, but plan on going tomorrow, taking my chances here today. Yeah, Forever Sci-Fi, I don't know why you've waited this long. I mean, obviously, people have legitimate reasons because of things going on in life. But if those aren't there, then, you know. Keely Chow, who is a member, does Thor still like pineapple pizza? He only had it that one time. So he's definitely not a fan of it. He liked it the one time he had it, but he's also a toddler, and toddlers think most things taste good. So it's not really much saying much, really. Remember, Sci-Fi as a member says, Spider-Man 3 is not even on the same level as Batman and Robin. But Batman and Robin is also... I think actually they're on the same level in the degree that they are both hilariously bad. I think actually Batman and Robin's even funnier. General Wingster, I say, we all know John Wick should have went on a revenge quest because they forced him to eat pineapple on pizza. Now that would have been quite the origin story. Asaj Mooley, what's going on? Ricky Bobby in the chat. Ralph in the chat. Hey, again, you can like bad movies, but it's still a bad movie. I like bad movies sometimes, but I still step back and say, yeah, it wasn't that great. Forever Sci-Fi, the John Wick series is the perfect example of what you get when you just want to entertain and tell a good new story. The loyalty and fame has only grown since the first movie. Agreed. And a lot of that, as you said, is because not only are they giving fans what they want as far as action sequences go, they're also investing time and effort into building a universe that has such rich and fun lore. I mean, it's phenomenal. And again, I already mentioned this to Hardwick, but since this was a comment made before his excommunicado, I will entertain it for now. It says, what do you think of the Renfield trailers? It looks okay. It honestly doesn't look like that great of a film, to be perfectly honest. I think the only reason to see the movie is to see what is going on with Nicolas Cage and to see that performance. Forever Sci-Fi says, now show the budget for Indy 5 for a good laugh. Do we have an updated budget for Indiana Jones 5? Do we have an official budget? Because I don't. If this is something like, oh, people are running with rumors, I don't run with those rumors. I look and see what has actually been confirmed. And nope, don't need to worry about that at all with this. Thank you for mentioning it, because oh boy, yeah. If you want to have a good laugh, everybody, look at this: $295 million budget. So $300 million budget. So its break-even point, and again, this is on a much more conservative estimate, its break-even point is roughly, $750 million? At least? So you're talking about a $750 to $900 million break-even point from the low end to the high end. Man. Oof. And I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it has a chance of being able to pull that off. I know some people do because they think that Indy still has pull and that, oh, well, James Mangold. It's like, yeah, but have you seen James Mangold on Twitter recently? Did you remember also that Phoebe Waller-Bridge is in this movie? Frank Marshall and Kathleen Kennedy are producers. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. That's awful. That's abysmal. Oh, man. That might be one of the biggest flops. Dan Crane. Hail Odin. Day 35 of Lent. Happy to be here. Happy to have you here, man. Appreciate you being here. Again, please put @Odin at the very beginning of your comment. If you have a comment or question, do not tag the channel. I will not call on you. I have rules. I just asked you to follow me again. @Odin. @Odin. Rosie G12, who is a member. So again, members don't have to worry about doing that. Saying, hail Odin in chat. Great to see you all. Rosie G, I feel like it's been forever. I was asking myself the other day, where has she been? Glad to have you here. Kincaid Rumsky over on Rumble. Has John Wick ever worn his Neo sunglasses? No. And I'm glad he hasn't, because I think that actually would be very much against what it should be as far as his character. It would not match his character at all. Anyway, let's see. The R, what is going on, R? Welcome back into the chat. Glad to have you here. General Wingster tagged to say, I only care about the 3DS because some great games have outrageous prizes physically. It's a good point, General Wingster. Yeah, and then again, I suppose if you had already gotten the game through the eShop, would the game still be available to you since you would have had it downloaded onto your device? I guess the tricky part is if you lose that game because it's a physical copy, or if it gets corrupted because it's a digital copy file, then you have no means of getting it again, I guess, unless you decide to go the emulator route. That's the other thing, too, I guess, would be for those who are 3DS fans who were relying on the eShop for certain games or certain experiences. Keep in mind, there are a lot of really great handhelds now where you can get a lot of great features, gameplay, ROMs in addition to that. One that I've been looking into personally, at some point I might actually even get it. It's called the Ein, it's like AYN. It's called the Ein Odin. And no, not just because of the nickname of Odin, but because it actually looks like a pretty awesome system that can emulate games up to they can emulate Wii games, or at the very least Nintendo GameCube games, N64 games and stuff. So That is also another route for certain people. Forever Sci-Fi as a member says, I had a cold this weekend, so legit excuse. Yeah, but what about last weekend? Because remember, this is the second weekend of its release. So what's your excuse, Forever Sci-Fi? I love you, man. Your average Patriot nerd, thank you for the $2 super sticker thumbs up. Appreciate that. Mr. ESQ, what is going on, Mr. ESQ? Thank you for the $5 super chat. Says Batman and Robin has got nothing on Geely. Was I supposed to say Geely? Are you talking about the film with Ben Affleck? I actually never saw that film, but I've heard the film's bad. Here's the thing, though. I don't remember people saying Geely is a hilariously bad movie. Batman and Robin is. Batman and Robin, I will purposefully put on the telly and watch because of how bad it is, because of how stupid fun it is. Anyway, Rax says, welcome back to the chat. Kimberly G, holy cow, Indy 5 will be a huge flop. Yeah, seriously. Again, when you start out with a break-even point of somewhere between $750 and $900 million, whew, I just do not see that happening for the film. I can't. I can't see how they could possibly pull that off. Let me try and see if I can even get a metric to compare this to, since I can't necessarily search as well as I'd wish. Let's see. Back in 2008, Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, that film made $790 million. That's unadjusted for inflation. So again, back in 2008, so that film probably ended up making a decent amount of money, actually, when you adjust that number. But that film also had a big opening and left a lot of fans very, very mad. Also, interestingly enough, only Frank Marshall was the producer on that, not Kathleen Kennedy. So you add to this Kathleen Kennedy, oh, yeah, that's not going to be good. That's not going to be good. So, yeah, if Crystal Skull can make $790.7 million on a $185 million budget, again, on all these are unadjusted numbers, yeah. Oh, boy. Laura, the Monomator General, says, I watched Silence this weekend, and I'm starting the book tonight. Nice! Okay. If you're starting the book, that means, I must assume then that means that you were a fan of the film. The film, I thought, was very powerful. It's very, very powerful. I know that there are some more traditionally minded Catholics that don't like the way in which it presents the priest, because the priest, for those that have not seen the film, there are priests that apostatize, meaning that they give up the faith. But one of the things I like about the movie is, and again, because I know that movies and books are not always the exact same, but one thing I like about how the movie was done was it seemed to imply by the end, you seem to get this implication that there was a conversion, that there was a change of heart. Because even in the case of apostasy, one of the gravest sins that one could ever commit, we know that forgiveness is possible if one seeks it. How do we know this? St. Peter, everybody, the first pope, denied Jesus in public 3 times. That's about as big of apostasy as you possibly can get. And yet, first pope, leader of the apostles, etc. Saint. Rosie G12, who is a member, says, oh, did no chance for the normies to save Indy 5? I won't see it, but I'm just one ticket. I really don't think so. As I said, movies today are a bit of a fickle beast, so Avatar is able to pull it off. You might have some indie support for the film. I don't think that necessarily the film is going to, be as much of a catastrophe as Shazam 2. Again, Shazam 2, we're talking a major film not getting to $200 million worldwide. I think that Indiana Jones is going to be able to make it past $200 million and maybe even by the end of its opening weekend worldwide. The question, though, is how much more does it make after that? Does the film cap out at $500 million? Or does the film cap out at $600, $650? That's kind of where I'm thinking right now. And people might think that's a little generous. Just keep in mind, when its break-even point is at least $750 million, yeah, even being I think, very generous with a possible box office total. It's not looking good. It is not looking good. Alexander, I've seen you now comment several times at Odin. If you want me to read your comment, again, I don't know how many times I need to say it, but my repetition is not just because I enjoy repeating myself, because I don't. But bruh, at Odin. KK and Rumsky over on Rumble, thank you for tagging, good sir. Thank you for doing it properly. Says, did you hear the rumor Iger told Kennedy that Indiana Jones has to make at least $900 million or things will get bad for her? I don't believe those rumors. Again, I'm not trying to say anything bad about people who have those rumors or who have access to inside information or anything like that. All right. General Wingster. Oh man. General Wingster is the pet troll. He's the troll that we like to have. And I appreciate that. Wingster's the best. Alexander, look at how everyone else is putting at Odin if they have a comment or question. It's because it is think of it as a secret code that allows me to be able to focus on people who have questions and not just random people just jumping into the chat one day. Anyway, King Kane Rumsky said about the rumor, I don't buy into it necessarily, all right? Because here's the thing. I bet the same people reporting those are similar people who may have also reported previously that Kathleen Kennedy's last day was supposed to be back in 2018. So I don't tend to buy any of those rumors anymore. I really don't. I think if she's ever going to be in trouble, if she's ever going to actually have her job at risk, there are so many other things that should have been the final thing, right? There are so many other things that should have, there are so many other things that could happen, or rather that have happened, that would be much bigger justification. So I don't buy into that personally. I don't. Abomination over on Odyssey has all this talk of Indy 5 is confusing me because there are only 3 Indiana Jones movies. Hey, you know what? Abomination, that is a great point. That is an excellent point. Kudos to you, because that's absolutely true. That is absolutely true. No doubt about it. There are only 3 Indiana Jones films. So, yeah, why are you even talking about this? Your Average Patriot Nerd says, I have a feeling Indy 5 is going to be spectacularly bad. Yes, I do as well. There's just really nothing about the film to this point that could possibly be construed as good. Dr. Martin Van Nostrand, thank you for tagging, good sir, says, not downplaying it, I like the artistic choreography of the brilliant action sequences and the world building, just not big on vengeance motif killing hundreds. But that's just the thing, though, is that it starts off in such a simplistic fashion. And yet, everything that happens from that moment builds and builds and builds. So now, to the point where revenge may have started it, but there's so much more driving it at this point in time. So I actually do think that it's kind of being undermined a little bit in the description. So Hardwick says, I'll definitely watch John Wick 4. I think I just got tired of the franchise all again, Hardwick. I will again say I will gladly talk to you about modern day films, including John Wick, once you've actually seen it. Can't judge a film like that without actually seeing it. I say the same thing for myself. General Wingster, you can't buy any more games from the store, but you still have them and can download them from your account. I bought a ton of virtual console games from both stores and still have them, says Wingster. Good. Glad to hear that. Emperor's Left Hand had to say, beside Mario and Dune, is there any good movies coming out this year? Not Marvel, they lost me. Well, hey, if you've not seen John Wick Chapter 4, Emperor's Left Hand, I would highly encourage you to do so. Also, I have a video on the channel that has my most anticipated films of the year. One of them that comes to the top of my head that hasn't come out yet is The Covenant. Guy Ritchie's The Covenant. Highly recommend. Or rather, I am very much highly anticipating that movie. Can't highly recommend it yet because I haven't seen it, but definitely looking forward to it. Also, if you have not yet seen Operation Fortune Ruse de Guerre, it came out this year. It's going to be on physical media very, very soon, and I would definitely recommend that one as well. Let's see. Orange Eye Reviews, who is a member on the channel, says, Odin recently watched Bullet Train. If I had known that Hiroki Sanada was in it before its theatrical release, I would have been to see that movie way sooner. He is one of my top 10 actors. Well, I wish I had known that because but also to be fair, his role is not very big in that movie. Not that it's that much bigger in John Wick 4, though I think that it is. It's much more memorable in John Wick 4. But yeah, Bullet Train's great. As you all know, Bullet Train was one of my favorite films of last year, and it is definitely, I think, one of the more underrated films that not a lot of people saw. And it was a film that was so much fun to see in IMAX. Tim Elf, welcome to the channel. Gulag Inmate says, which will be the biggest flop of 2023 between Quantumania, Indy 5, and the Marvels? Okay. Here is what I think might actually happen. So I don't think the Marvels is getting released this year. You know how I keep on getting pushed back? I don't know. I have a feeling in my gut that the Marvels is going to be pushed back to 2024 because they are in such a crisis at this point. And I think we will know whether that's going to happen or not with the release of Guardians. Because the studios, as we all know, are terrible at reading the tea leaves. So if Guardians ends up being a big success because the Guardians franchise has a lot of goodwill built up to it, even though I think that Guardians 2 just does not even hold a candle to Guardians 1, and I really am not caring at all for Guardians 3. But if Guardians does well at the box office, because even though that's how I feel with Guardians 2, there's obviously still a lot of people who saw it. There's a lot of people who are excited for this movie. If Guardians 3 is successful, then I think the Marvels has a much higher chance of staying and keeping its 2023 release date. If even Guardians comes in well under projections, if we see a 67+% drop from week 1 to week 2, which has been very prominent amongst almost all of the MCU films that come out over the last year or so, I think then you will see soon after, and again, this is just a theory on my part, have no inside information or anything like that. I'm just saying I feel it in my gut that they are going to delay that film to 2024. So with that being the case, to get back to the initial question, Indy 5, no doubt about it. Because Quantumania, you're looking at it being around like a $20 to $80 million flop, depending on your metrics. So not good, but also not as bad as it could be. Indy, I mean, you're looking at probably at least $100 million as a flop. There's the General Wingster comment I was talking about earlier that was very, very funny. Laura says, non-religious perspective here, but I felt horrible for the priests because they were forced to deny God to end the torture of innocent. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, Laura. Absolutely. And that is why I think that the film is so effective. It's because you understand why it's such a big deal to do that. And one of my favorite sequences in the film is they show you these Japanese martyrs, right? These because, you know, obviously the film is not talking about specific people, but it's obviously inspired by real events. But these Japanese converts who died for the faith, who were martyrs. And it's the crucifixion by tide. Oh, that thing is just, it's one of those things where you have such sorrow in your heart for what's happening to them, but then also you're like, the amount of like bravery it takes to do something like that. You know, the amount of fortitude, the virtue of fortitude that is required. As a Christian, it makes me ask that question of, do I have that capacity? Would I have that capacity? And if I don't, okay, how do I go about trying to fix that? Because I'm reading a lot of papal documents, historical documents, and, you know, the church has universally from the beginning held as incredibly important the willingness to give up one's life for Christ. Because if we don't believe who Christ is, if we don't really have faith, then so that's the question I know that I struggle with a lot for myself. General Wingster, I appreciate that. It's a real beard, though. Nova Trail Studios, thank you for tagging it, sir, says, do you think the success of Top Gun Maverick will help boost the box office for Mission Impossible 7? Also, did you hear about RK Outpost pooping his pants? I did not hear about him pooping his pants. I heard about him being sick. I did not know it included pooping his pants, but that's great. As far as the Top Gun Maverick question, I don't think it's going to have a direct correlation, all right? Because, again, there are some people who still wrongly think that people went to go see Top Gun Maverick specifically for Tom Cruise. No. People went to go see the film because Tom Cruise happens to be an actor that does his own stunts and pushes others to do very similar things. So the success of Mission Impossible 7 is going to be purely on, are they going to have as effective a marketing campaign? And also, is the film going to be as good as Top Gun Maverick that it's going to get people talking? Because the opening weekend of Maverick was not really anything to write home about. It was the week 1 to week 2 drop off and how small it was, historically small. If my memory serves me right, the weekend 1 to 2 drop off, which for many and most big budget films, of which Top Gun Maverick was, most of them tend to be well over 50% dropping off. But because of the word of mouth, and again, it didn't have a huge opening weekend, because of great word of mouth, the film had a drop in the teens, which is almost unheard of for a movie like that. And then every weekend after that and every day, it just kept pushing out more and more and more because it just kept getting that positive word of mouth. So it depends on whether Mission Impossible 7 is a good film, an entertaining film, and also the way in which it is marketed. So do I think it's possible for it to do well? Yes, absolutely. But it's not going to be because of Tom Cruise. It's not going to be because of Top Gun Maverick. It's going to be because the movie is doing what the movie needs to do. Anyway, Cthulhu. Time to say, who makes more box office money? Justice League or Indy 5 seems a good comparison. That is actually a great comparison. That is an excellent comparison. And I honestly don't know the answer. And I think the reason why ultimately is because we... Actually, I think you meant The Flash. I always think of it as a Justice League movie too, by the way. But yeah, it's the Flash movie. So let me try and see. All right, so right now the reported budget, and this was back from June of last year, and we know there's been several reshoots since then. The original reported budget was $200 million. I would not be surprised if that gets adjusted. Most films tend to get adjusted. Some people, again, wrongly will try to run with, oh, they're going to hide the numbers, etc. It's like, okay, they might try to make things look better than what they are. But I have seen this with another film called Solo: A Star Wars Story, where that film had a budget that was out there and reported. And then because of the reshoots, they then adjusted it, and we got a pretty accurate number. And that film ended up being a massive flop. So I would not be surprised to see this budget get adjusted. So depending upon that, right? They're claiming $200 million. I would not be surprised to see it to get adjusted to 250 at least, or for the budget to be reported from different sites as being somewhere between 2 and 300 million. In which case, I would put it in my chart as 250 because that would be, taking the middle ground there of the projections. But because of that, I think that though both films are, I ultimately think, going to be failures, because of the budget alone, I think I'd probably have to put my money behind Indy 5 because of how much higher that budget is. I mean, seriously. Victor Fontaine, what's going on? Says, or tag like this, Odin loves Avatar. How dare you? King and Rumsky over on Rumble says, I think the Kathleen Kennedy thing may have more of a chance this time because 1, of a bad comedy layoffs at Disney, 2, Alonzo firing, 3, Kathleen Kennedy lawsuit. And again, I've heard this all before. Not all of those specific things you mentioned, but this time. I've heard this time so many times before. So I'm not going to believe it until it actually happens. Or until there's actually verifiable information out there. And not just rumors from hidden sources. And again, I understand having to hide sources. That's how you keep your sources, right? I understand that to an extent. But ultimately, when there have been one too many rumors put out there about Kathleen Kennedy's demise. And it's that fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. This is what, Fool me thrice? Fool me 4 times? Fool me 5 times? Alexander, look, he learns. Tag to say, I watched John Wick a few years ago. Might have to watch it again because I have changed my perspective so much on everything. What's your thought on John Wick 2 with Common? So I think I mentioned this at the very beginning of the stream. I was talking about this at the very beginning of the stream. I love all of them. They're all fantastic. They're all great. Emperor's Left Hand. I saw John Wick 4 on Sunday, and thank you for answering the suggestion. No problem, dude. Thanks for tagging. Orange Chat Reviews, who is a member, says John Wick 4 is the second movie that Hiroki Sanada and Keanu Reeves star in together. The 2012 version of 47 Ronin was their first collaboration. Interesting. Very interesting. Epic Ninja Shiro, hail to you. Cthulhu, who's a member, says, I thought Temple was a little too gruesome to rewatch. Temple of Doom? Yeah. I personally like Raiders of the Lost Ark and Last Crusade significantly more than Temple of Doom. My favorite, and there's a bias that I have towards this one, is actually Last Crusade. And it's because of the different like Christian historical themes in the movie. I love it. It's a great film in addition to that, but it's those things that really kind of keep it up there for me. Raiders of the Lost Ark is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I think that it is a phenomenal movie, but preference-wise, I go with Last Crusade. And I don't hate, by any means, I don't hate Temple of Doom. But Temple of Doom, I agree. I think it is a little harder to rewatch than the other films. And rewatchability is an important factor in a lot of ways. Kimberly G, who is a member, says Tom Cruise doing his own stunts makes him the GOAT of actors right now. Oh, for sure. No doubt about it. And not even just that, though. He is, and again, I think that this really does need to be stressed. It's not, Abomination over on Odyssey says, fool me at Levensies, in reference to the Kathleen Kennedy stuff. Yeah, exactly. But it's not even the fact that Tom Cruise does his own stunts. He's able to inspire others in his films to do the same thing. Top Gun Maverick was a success not because of just him in the pilot seat, or rather, sorry, not just because he was in the actual jet, but because he was able to get Miles Teller in the jet, a bunch of other actors whose names I don't know in the jet, right? He was able to get all of these people into jets, go through training to be able to withstand the G-forces, for all of these actors to learn to be their own camera operator, their own director in a certain regard. I mean, there are so many things they had to do in those jets to get those shots. They had to know lighting. They had to know all of these different qualities of filmmaking and learn all of it in addition to acting. And why did that happen? Because of Tom Cruise. Let's see. Great Wuda says, what are your favorite 2 or 3 film locations that you love throughout the world besides Japan? Mine are New York City and Japan. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think Japan is phenomenal. As far as filming locations, though, I guess I don't really necessarily have a preference because it depends on what you're showing, right? I don't watch films and say, oh, this is great for this reason. Because a lot of times people can make certain areas look like others. You can make a desert in Arizona, for instance, look like another country. But off the top of my head, I would say New Zealand for The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings stuff. Cthulhu says, no, I mean the 2017 Justice League movie. Completely forgot about The Flash exists. So you mean between those two from the Justice League movie that did flop versus Indiana? Oh, that's easier. Indiana Jones 5, I think, is going to be the bigger flop of the two, because of the budget differences between the two. But yeah, I would also say Flash, between it and the Flash, it would be similar. Giant Killer saw Jesus Revolution the other night. It was amazing. I'm glad that you liked it. I just am not really drawn to Christian films typically, that are more generic Christian and not specifically Catholic. That's just me. Like there's only one example in modern times that I can think about that I actually enjoyed more than I should have. It's not a good film, but it is one that I still enjoyed, probably because I like the music. It's actually on Netflix. It's called A Week Away. And I don't know. I really like the music. It's not a good movie by any means, but the music's good. But yeah, anything, I mean, I know that I'm going to trigger some people here. I know that the makers of God That's Not Dead had nothing to do necessarily with Jesus Revolution, and that's not the same kind of movie at all. But those just general films, like when I think about Christian films or films that have Christian messaging within them, I think Passion of the Christ. You know, I like that's a movie that I have like that has my like full support. But anything else, I typically don't find myself enjoying. And again, I know it's not necessarily a fair comparison, and I know that the story is very different and focused on different things. It's just not my cup of tea. It's just not my cup of tea. Let's see. As the chat is once again being silly. And by chat, I just mean the box, for some reason, is just not updating the way that it should. King Kane Rumsky over on Rumble says, tough question. Do you believe Jesus would be flipping the Catholic tables today? Oh, that's not very much of a tough question at all. Yes, I would say for sure. It's scary to think about the world that we live in and how little is being done to stop the bleeding right now happening in the church. And it ultimately comes down to the fact that we have shepherds right now who are not upholding to the true faith. Chris Rose, hail to you. Hardwick tagged to say, for me, Temple of Doom is mostly a letdown by a weak ending, other than a few bits like the stupid air jump. I mostly like it up until then. Yeah, again, it's a fine movie. It's fine. But it's definitely not the best. Orange Eye Reviews, Last Crusade is my favorite. Sean Connery, you cannot top that. Raiders is good, but Last Crusade is my go-to in those movies. Also, I'm looking into getting a replica of the Cross of Coronado. Oh, nice. Very cool. Very, very cool. Very cool, my friend. All right. Again, the YouTube chat is just being silly for me. Let's see. Emperor's Left Hand says, you may not have a clear answer for this, as you like the numbers, but of the 4 DC movies coming out this year, which, if any, is going to make money? Oh, boy. S2, Shazam 2 is not. I can confirm that it's a flop. The Flash, Blue Beetle, Aquaman 2. So The Flash, I honestly don't think is going to make money. As I said, I honestly think that this production budget is going to get updated soon, and it's going to end up being a lot higher than the initial $200 million that they projected a year ago. Also, I think that Blue Beetle is too obscure of a reference. And again, I speak as someone who is not a comics person. So I hear Blue Beetle and I say, what in the world is that? I have no frame of reference for that character. And so I think that's going to ultimately probably lead to the fall of that and that not being a huge success. And then going to Aquaman 2. Aquaman, obviously, the first Aquaman was the first of the entire DCEU, and I think actually the only of the DCEU, EU specific, right, to make $1 billion, to crack $1 billion. So if any film has a chance of making its money back, I'm not going to say a success, but making its money back, of those, I would have to argue that Aquaman 2 is in the best position. But I do not say that with a huge amount of confidence. I definitely do not say that with a huge amount of confidence. Let me see if I can find some more information. So actually, yeah, and Blue Beetle was mentioned, and yet it is not, at least according to Wikipedia, it's not considered to be a part of the DCEU. So that actually might only be its only saving grace, is that it might cost less money. But, or maybe this is the only ones that have happened so far this year. Let me try and see. Okay, yeah, those are just the ones that have come out this year. So let me see if I can find their filmography that goes past that. Or so they've rechanged their naming scheme so often too, so I'm wondering if that might be a part of it. Let's see, box office performance, critical and public response, other media. All right, yeah, that's just a giant roll. So I was trying to look for the budget on it. I was trying to look at the budget for it because that's going to probably be the biggest factor for me. But Ken Rumsky over on Rumble, who is Blue Beetle's arch enemy? Blue Cockroach? Again, if anyone's a fan of Blue Beetle, I'm not trying to put it down. I'm just saying, as someone who's not a comics person, who has no real knowledge of this character, yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be its downfall, is that normies and normie adjacent, yeah, I'm going to use that, normie adjacent box office people, I don't think are going to go and end up seeing it. It would have to have either an amazing trailer or at the very least it has to have some amazing word of mouth. And I don't know if it's going to be able to do that. Alexander tagged to say, Yellowstone, have you watched it? Very woke show against capitalism, private property, Native American mistreatment, and has... Alexander, again, I don't know where you've been, but I thought Yellowstone I think it's a fantastic show. I have issues with it for more moral reasons. I have issues with the excessive sexuality and things like that. And I've spoken about that previously, several times actually. But it's hard for anyone to argue that it's anti-capitalism. What I like about Taylor Sheridan's writing is that he does not really take one side over the other, because I think anyone who's going to argue as far as who's the protagonist in the show, you're going to say the Duttons and the Dutton family have the most support. Like, when I'm watching that show, even though I despise what they do, I want the Duttons to win, because the Duttons in the show are the good guys. So it's hard for anyone to argue that it's anti-capitalist when they are being presented as the good guys. Again, they're being presented as doing terrible things because guess what? Extreme unfettered capitalism is not a good thing. That may be unpopular to some people, but if you have no restrictions whatsoever, it denies the common good. This is part of Catholic social teaching. You can't have, there's a complete and utter condemnation of socialism and communism. There's no place for it in a Catholic worldview. Capitalism, though, there is, but it has to be where it does not infringe upon the rights of other people. And really, they have not shown that to necessarily be the case within the show Yellowstone. Because it's not that he is pricing people out of just existing or pricing people out of just owning a home. There's criticisms of him, but again, he is a guy who is well known within the area, and he's a guy who also does terrible things. And so there's a reason for him to be worthy of being criticized, to criticize. But you can't say it's anti-capitalist, bro. It just can't. And then as far as the Native American mistreatment stuff, a lot of that stuff is based in truth. You know, some of it definitely you're like, okay, here we go. But some of it is based in truth. And again, who ultimately comes out being viewed as the good guy and the one that people are rooting for, it's the Duttons. So can't say that. That is inaccurate. Let's see. Gulag Inmate says, when will Quantumania box office finally overtake Puss in Boots? Last Wish box office still 10 million behind. At this rate, I don't know if it ever will. Icthulu says, knowing Hollywood, Blue Beetle's arch enemy will be Monsanto. Let's see, Alexander. I'm not saying it's not a good show, just not a fan of the style of protagonist. You know, it can be woke, but hey, if it's well written. And again, it's not woke though. I mean, it depends on what your definition of woke is, firstly. And if it is anything that results in that show being woke, then you need to go back to the drawing board. Steven, welcome back, brother. Time to say, as we're getting closer to Super Mario Brothers, do you still think it won't reach $1 billion? Yep, still holding to that. Not just for the bet, but because I honestly do believe that based off of the early projections, it's looking like the film is going to have a very similar tracking to that of Minions 2. And I know some people might say, but, Mario is such a bigger IP than Minions. Yes, in other mediums. But we know this as a fact that just because you're successful in one medium does not mean automatically that you're going to have a healthy crossover into other mediums. So I think that it's going to be strong enough for the film to do well. I don't think it's going to be enough to bring it to $1 billion. Especially, again, I base that off of not only the performance of a film like that of Minions 2, but also I base that off of, look at all of the animated films that come out the last few years. Has any of them hit $1 billion? And I ask this as an honest question because I honestly don't know. I can't think of one off the top of my head since 2020, but I think there's a lot of historical things to push that and to support that. Oh boy, okay. Alexander, buddy, what do you think they made it for? You think Hollywood really made a movie in favor of white? Oh my God, dude, Alexander, stop, man. All right. That's like saying, who do you think they made it for? Oh, they made it for the people paying for a service because of capitalism. Bro, just let it go. Hardwick, this is actually a good question. Is it true that 1923 has anti-Catholic elements? Yes. And in fact, I have not been watching 1923 rather, as quickly because of that reason. They have an entire character arc where it takes place at a Catholic school for Native Americans. They are forced to be there. The nuns are abusive, and let's just say there are a lot of things where there's not a single person in the Catholic school who's good. That's when you know, I think this is what Alexander's trying to get to, but he's not, again, it's just not there in the area that he's going to. In this show, though, this story arc, there's not a single character within this Catholic school that is portrayed as being good in any way. That is a sign of something else going on. So it's actually been very difficult for me to get through the show because even though the writing is good, and again, this is, I think, a much better example than what Alexander's trying to come up with Yellowstone, because it's just not there with Yellowstone. With this show, though, we could definitely say there's some good writing, some good acting, but this one subplot alone is just not good. It is just very, very flawed, because it's one thing to show the different sides, to show that there's different personalities, to at least have someone good, but when you completely demonize every single person in this singular group, that's when it becomes a bit of a problem. Anyway, JS, thank you for the $5 super chat, and we are running out of time, so it's probably one of the last comments that I will highlight. Might be able to highlight one or two more, but let's see. JS says, saw the movie Champions with Woody Harrelson. It's an underrated, I think is what I'm supposed to say. Movie that was a good movie, very enjoyable to watch. Yeah, I mean, the trailers definitely made it seem like a fun time, no doubt about it. But yeah, no one saw it. The film is ultimately a box office flop, sadly. So let's see. Steven, do you think Marvel will recast Jonathan Majors if keeping him to be cast as Kang, Marvel gambling with another propaganda with Majors? Here's the problem, though, is that everything that I've been hearing at the very least about the whole thing with Majors is that he is, again, innocent until proven guilty, and he is fighting for his innocence, and there's a decent chance that it will end up going in his favor based off of the information that we have. We got to wait for it. Laura says, it has been interesting learning about Scorsese and Garfield's prep for the role as I watched the behind-the-scenes videos about Silence. Oh, yeah, absolutely. General Wingster, we all know Welcome to Raccoon City was a huge success. Oh, wait, no, it wasn't, and it's a huge franchise. Yep. Your Average Patriot Nerd, who is a member, says, check out Deprogrammed with Carrie Smith's last Friday episode where she defines the meaning of woke. Yeah, she does a great job. Excellent job at it. King and Rumsky over on Rumble says, pretty sure the founding father said the USA and Yellowstone won't work without a solid moral Christian foundation. Yep. Yes, they did. Steven says, after watching John Wick 4, who would you like to see a spin-off movie with and why? Well, I think they're already doing it to an extent with the Continental. I think that's going to focus more on the early days. It's sad because they're doing it in the early days of the character played by Ian McShane of Winston, a younger Winston, and how he got involved and how he became, the big leagues. So it'll be cool to have that, but obviously I'd rather have just a movie with a movie or a show with Ian McShane. But yeah, Sharon I think would also be a great one to see a bit of his backstory as well. But that one's a little bit tougher because for many reasons you would have to recast, and you'd already be recasting most likely with a younger character anyway. And again, that one you might have to wait a little while just to make sure it's being done tastefully. Again, rest in peace to Reddick. Again, 60 years old. Can't believe he died. All right, and then Carl tagged at 827 to say, but it was history. Got to take the good with the bad. Here's the problem, though, Carl, is that when you take it and present a singular myopic view, that is when it becomes a problem. Because were there individuals acting in such a way? Sure. But to just say, oh, well, that was the way history was, it's like, okay, you can only say that so much. It would be like trying to present the Native Americans in a completely negative light because of the actions of just a few, right? Or to present, in this case, the church, because that's the other thing too, is that it implies the entire church being corrupt versus individual members of the church being corrupt. And to say that within this entire community of religious sisters and priests, not one of them is good, not one of them is going to talk up, that, I mean, again, you can talk about some of these things being historically accurate. That instead is just blatant and ridiculous and insane propaganda, anti-Catholic propaganda. Anyway, Dan Crane, thank you very much for the comment. I very much appreciate that. I very much appreciate you. Are you good at making palm decoration? Like, not necessarily. I know how to make a palm cross, but that's pretty much it, if that was the question you had there, Stephen. But I'll have that be the last one. Thank you all very much for being here tonight. A lot of fun in tonight's show. I think the big takeaways, of course, is the fact that John Wick in a very good position. Excellent film that everyone should see, especially Hardwick. Especially if you want to keep asking questions, Hardwick. Go watch John Wick Chapter 4, like, today, because I recommend seeing it in a premium format screen, and you only got a couple more days to see it in premium format screen with the release of other films like Dungeons & Dragons and Mario coming up. So go and watch it. If you have not seen it yet, highly, highly recommend it. I know that I really want to go see it a second time myself, and I'm going to try to go see it before it leaves the premium format screens also, because it's just a very awesome experience. So we can see John Wick and look to that film and see how it is on the road to being a very successful film. And then in addition to that, you also have Shazam in a terrible position, And I think that is ultimately going to lead to a pretty big problem for the DC EU going forward. And you're annoying me, Alexander. Once again, you're gone for a long time, and you come back and you just don't get it, bro. Anyway, so with all that being said, thank you all for being here today, everybody. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Seriously, from the bottom of my heart, it does mean a lot for y'all to be here and to support the channel, whether through watching, through liking, through subscribing, whatever means it might be. Thank you. If you are going to be in the Orlando area this weekend, please do let me know. Again, my plan is still, and obviously things can change with family, but plan is to drive down Friday evening into the early hours of the morning, unfortunately. And then I'll be at MegaCon probably most of the day on Saturday. I don't know if we're going to do a meetup. I think if we are, it's going to be kind of like a last minute of sorts, unofficial, informal meetup. But nothing's been confirmed or nothing's been said at this point, so don't take my word on that. But I just would not be surprised if that was to happen. But if you're going to be in the Orlando area, do let me know, and hopefully see you down there. And I'll be heading back to the home on Sunday, though I do want to find a place, of course, to go to Mass, as it's Palm Sunday this coming Sunday, and that will make things a little trickier because most churches tend to lessen their services on Palm Sunday, because obviously Palm Sunday is a huge Sunday, is a huge feast, and for that very reason, it might be more difficult to have a good Mass time to go to that will allow me to get back on the road to get back home at a reasonable hour. So we'll have to wait and see. I'm still trying to work things out, but I should be down in Orlando this weekend. So anyway, thank you all very much for being here. Again, smash the like button, like the fire button, Odyssey, smash the Rumble button. Thank you, King Kane Rumsky, for hanging out in the fort over on Rumble, and Abomination for holding down the fort over on Odyssey. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening. And as always, God bless.
And now for a huge shout out to all of my March Patreon, Subscribe Star, and local members at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. Starting off with Father Luca Illich, Garrett Searles, Chris from the 80s, who can check out over his YouTube channel by the same name, Jaimir Irie Hymason, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Orange at Reviews, who can check out over at his YouTube channel, Laura, the Modern Major General Story, Rosetta Allen, who can check out at her YouTube channel, Eagle Rider, Miss Martin Muses, and you can check her out at her YouTube channel by the same name also. To my Subscribe Star members, Matt317, you can check out over at his Twitch channel, Matt317, Fast Reaction, The R, Mr. Roy, J-Rod, the Beer Guru, and ZK Man, who you can find out over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, to my locals members, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player, J.H. Schwalbach, Brett D90, and the amazing lawyer, Robert Barnes. Thank you all very much for supporting me at the Patreon level, Subscribe Star level, and locals level of Keeper the Bifrost and above. If you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and every video, make sure to check out the top link in the video description to find out more ways that you can support the channel, including ways to get access to a podcast and also ways to get access to giveaways that I do on the channel, and also, of course, to my coveted Chosen of Valhalla level as well. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.